Solvitur Ambulando, The Adventures of Steve and Dixie by Stephen Breakstone. Snippets from my journal. Episode 27, Month 9, February 1987. February 7th, 1987, Saturday. Dixie and I have progressed our running to beyond the town limits. We're up to 5 miles for most runs. From our apartment, it's only 1 mile until we hit the edge of Dodge. As soon as the houses end, we are on the American prairie. The openness and the wide open, ongoing spaces. Looking out onto forever, it makes me feel good and allows the mind to wander. Being in town the last few months has given me the chance to appreciate all that I have taken for granted. I had forgotten, or rather, I had not quite realized, how I had missed the openness. When I didn't have it, I didn't consciously miss it. It's only now that I realize, now that I've put myself back out into the vastness, how much I have missed it. Walking every day, and it became quite annoying at times. And when working on the farm, it became boring. I didn't realize how much it meant to me. Appreciation of the land that stretches forever, grasses that are light brown or green, softly rolling lands, rocks and crevices, land dotted with cows and horses, sky, clouds, and colors that vary from direction to direction and moment to moment. Or sometimes clear blue, sky blue everywhere you look. In town, perhaps there is a strange security in the clutter. But out there, your heart and mind have a chance to expand and to breathe. It's only lately that I'm beginning to realize that there is a place for me outside of town. And I look forward to the time when we will be living out there again. I look forward to Colorado, to the prairies and mountains. When we run, Dixie runs like the wind with the enthusiasm of a squirrel in spring. She is alive and enjoys every bounce, every step taken by one of her 4 feet. Dixie will live forever. And there's no greater pleasure I can get than from just watching her. She's the epitome of enjoying life when she's full of energy and running free, smelling the smells, hearing the sounds, watching the world. I don't think my mind has the capacity for the joy, pleasure, and fun she has. She will live forever. Dixie is beauty, inspiration. Dixie is art. I think of old Benson. Benson, the dog of my childhood. The dog who would also live forever. But in fact, he got old, arthritic, blind, and deaf. The dog that once protected Steve the child had gotten to the point where he had to be taken care of by Steve the young adult. It's been almost a year since I flew home from New Orleans to put him to sleep and bury him in the backyard. And my mind opens. I've always opened my mind to the experiences and wisdom and more knowledgeable elders. Rabbi Kushner says it very well in his book, When All You've Ever Wanted Wasn't Enough. Yes, he wrote, at this age and time, I do feel immortal, looking to a long life and great things. But there will be a time when my mind will realize that it doesn't go on forever. But until then, I am enjoying the feeling of immortality of Dixie and me while we have the strength and youth to do so. For I will not take it for granted. It will not last forever. But until then, we will enjoy. February 17th, 1987, Tuesday. It has been 5 months since we have been on the road. Memories are such a wonderful part of the human mind, and we have such the ability to distort. Sometimes I'll look back at all those disgustingly hot and sweaty days with a certain amount of pleasure. Yet, I know there was a lot of pain. There is also a certain pleasantness in seeing myself, in my mind's eye, with my trusty bandana wrapped around my head after soaking it, the bandana, in fresh, cool water. It looked good, it felt good, and it was there because of a need, a practical purpose, not because it looked cool or it was in style. That is also the way I feel about bathing in a stream or lake. I'm not much for swimming, but I do enjoy splashing around in a lake or a pond. When we are living outdoors, those gifts of nature become a necessity, not a luxury. We need that water for Dixie to drink. And I see the pond, lake, stream, river, etc. water not only as something pretty, but how I could use it to bathe. I find great pleasure in needing and using what nature has to offer. not only as a fun alternative to my shower or bath at home. This is how I become part of nature and appreciate it. Not by seeing it as something I use on the planet, but as part of the planet. It is Earth, and I am a part of it, and I need it. I do not take it for granted, and I do not abuse it. I use it, and I am thankful. Side note: generally, I never drank water from streams, ponds, or rivers unless I purified the water first with tablets. Or I was at a high elevation in the mountains and I knew the source was fresh and that the stream was filtered by rock and soil and it hadn't gone past where people or domestic animals had roamed. I usually carried enough water for myself from a clean source, such as a store or a restaurant or a building that I had passed. And my powdered Gatorade stretched that too. Remember, generally, stores at that time did not sell bottled water like they do today. So I was always looking for a hose or a faucet on the side of the building, if not inside a store. But as for Dixie, at 8 pounds plus per gallon for water, I couldn't possibly carry enough water to meet her needs. And fortunately, I don't think drinking from the streams ever caused her any serious health issues. Maybe we were just lucky, but hey, we did what we had to do, and that was the balance that we found to accomplish our goals. But water, as for bathing, believe me, most streams and creeks across America were good enough, and washing off accumulated sweat and grime, always a welcome relief. Looking at myself in the mirror, I think of the past, present, and future. In the last 18 months, I have gone from the easy life of college to living in a van, getting in shape in New Orleans, walking 1,000 miles, working on a farm, and now getting in shape again for the next 1,000 to 2,000 walking miles. I now weigh 142 pounds. Not very much, but considering that I have weighed 135 pounds since I was in the 10th grade, it's about time I put on some weight. But being about 6 feet tall, that still makes me pretty skinny. Fortunately, I'm well proportioned. At least I think so. And I'm proud of how I have built up muscle. I'll tell you one thing, though. These legs of mine do not look like they have carried 45 to 50 pounds from Louisiana to Kansas. Dixie, on the other hand, looks good at 72 pounds. She's not a big German Shepherd, and I do not see her as a big dog. But it is all relative to what you're used to and what one considers a big dog. More importantly, I'm more concerned at how we have changed mentally. Recently, I wrote a letter to Mike and Karen stating that I have hardened a bit. I had to, at least in terms of being by myself. I have to handle any type of crisis or situation, and I'm the only one who's concerned about my welfare. Oh, of course, my parents and friends are also, but they are half a continent away. Therefore, I cannot afford to be weak. I have to be tough. I have only Dixie's shoulder to lay my head on when I am lonely, or sad, disappointed, or sick. And when Dixie has sore pads, or a fever, or gets run over, those shoulders become iffy. But I realize that it's also important not to be too tough. It's important to let some things permeate this leathery skin. The hard part is trying to see where to draw the line because there are so few people to help me do so. Captain James Kirk on Star Trek had Dr. Bones McCoy to show him extreme emotion and passion. He had Mr. Spock to show him cold, hard logic. Kirk's job was to find the balance. My job is to find that balance without the aid of a Bones or a Spock or any other counterparts. Well, Mike and Karen can play those roles for me sometimes, even on the phone, but they're not around every day. My goal is to find the balance in my life. I tend to lean toward the logical, but throw in a good handful of my natural human feelings when I try to understand life and what it is and how I try to make the best possible one for me. And hopefully, when I feel I have a good, happy balance, perhaps I can share that sacred secret with others. In terms of Dixie's changes, she too is not the same dog who left New Orleans. 7 months ago, she was a puppy, potentially on death row at the animal shelter, but got a new lease on life and was ready to take advantage of a new friend and her regained freedom. Now she is that much more experienced, and she even knows not to splash the puddles in puddles and then jump on me. She still loves the puddles, though. She is still, in fact, a puppy. Larger breed dogs are puppies until they're about 2 years old. She's only 1.5. But I admit there is one area of her personality that disappoints me a bit, and that is her lack of courage when it comes to meeting up with other dogs. She has a habit of taking to flight when other dogs come chasing. I saw that on the road, and I still see that when we go around in town or running. She has yet to run into the street, but I fear that she might someday when a car is coming. But she usually runs towards me and hides behind my legs. Maybe it has to do with her upbringing or her spay operation, or maybe just her lack of aggressiveness. I'm sure she is stronger than most dogs, and for sure she has more stamina, but she's just not very brave. Of course, besides being young, it's also true that this is always happening on other dogs' property, and dogs understand territorial rights. Dixie on the road has no property of her own to defend, and therefore understands that she's always the intruder. Nevertheless, it's not very comforting to me. But I am her pack leader, and I'm sure I am a comfort to her. But she's not only my companion, but I also got a dog as a peace of mind and a security system. I think we really do protect each other, depending on the situation. For instance, on the road, when I'm lying down or sleeping or napping or just relaxing, she has kept me aware of intruders, people or animals who had not previously been in the picture. She has alerted me to people just passing by or killer armadillos and once when we were in a tent, Dixie began to growl. That was unusual. I mean, I knew something was somewhere, but I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. I unzipped the door flap of the tent and stuck my head out and looked around behind the tent. And behind us, only 10 feet away, was an extremely large black bull that dwarfed the tent and us lying horizontally inside. It was, in fact, his pasture, and we were the intruders. We hopped a barbed wire fence, which is not uncommon for us, but I never do that if the field is presently occupied by farm animals. This time, when we set up camp, they were nowhere to be seen, and I could see very far in every direction. I didn't let Dixie get a good look for fear of her putting her curiosity to work and causing trouble, but I got up and made some scary sounds, and then so did the bull. Here was my inexperience at work, though. It turned out he was only curious, no more so than when I take a look at his kind from the road. He simply came over as if to say, "Hi, just came over to see what was going on. Staying the night, are you? Well, that's just fine. You have a good night. I have to get back to my cows and heifers now." And off he loped. And off he loped. Side note, that's another example of a unique yet simple and yet poignant and powerful experience of sleeping out there somewhere, especially at that early stage of the trip. That was a very cool experience. Of course, I realize that some listeners will also think that that was very cool, but others might think, "Steve, you're just nuts." Of course, both are possible. I started this segment discussing running with Dixie. That February is the first time we ran together because we were in training. Previously, it was me walking and her walking or running or loping and, well, sometimes dragging. But to this day, in my mind's eye, I can see Dixie running somewhere, so many places across America. I loved watching her run each and every time she would. It's still a part of me. And in my mind's eye, I could also see so many places that we've been in the United States of America. I mean, the landscapes and the clouds and the birds and the wetlands and the pastures of animals and big and small towns and actually sometimes just a few houses in the middle of nowhere. I could see it all, really, but what I wouldn't give to have had the technology we have today and video all that and be able to show it to you, show it back to myself. I wish I had tons of great pictures of all that I saw, but I have no choice but to leave it to your imagination. And I suggest that you imagine great. On another note, I'm not so sure about the quote that I wrote from Rabbi Kushner about youth and the feeling of immortality is exact, but it doesn't really matter because I think the sentiment is correct. At that point in my adventure, it's the end of February 1987. And reviewing, once again, my notes, I can tell that I was ready to leave Dodge City and the job at the country club and focus on the next leg, as it were, of the journey. I felt I was getting, well, or I had gotten as much out of Dodge City and the Midwest small town experience that I was going to get. Obviously, I started feeling a little antsy as I would at that time, and that showing up. And I think that was showing up in my job and my day-to-day existence, and then obviously some of the things I put in my journal. I was not yet 24, still full of piss and vinegar, and well, wanted more within the realm of my mental, physical, and emotional abilities and my risk tolerance as I continued to walk across America with Dixie, which was to create a fulfilling life for myself in the late 20th century. At this point in my life, the 21st century was still far away. You know, it's the year 2025 as I record this, and I'm 62 years old. And I can remember easily 30 years ago, 1995. And it doesn't feel like 3 decades of time is that long ago. But in the year 1987, the year 2000, which was only 13 years going forward at that time, was hardly imaginable, at least in my eyes and my brain. At 24, I couldn't realistically picture myself as 37 years old in the year 2000. Yet, I knew that that was coming and that somehow this journey, which was still only 33% complete, was going to be a big factor in who that person was, who that person I was to become, that person way, way out into the future. But nevertheless, I was confident that that person, me, was going to be happy, healthy, and successful. I just had no specific details encapsulating that future picture of me. But going back to Dodge City, I did have one more thing to look forward to before heading out again, which I'll discuss in the next video. So that's it for now. Peace.